the group what it really means to be part of Am Yisrael, to be part of the Jewish nation. I don't think there's any Jew, affiliated or not, religious or not, that wasn't affected by what happened on October 7th. I remember, probably you all can as well, we were in shul that Simchat Torah day when we heard that there was a lot of chaos going on in Israel. Now, nobody at that time thought it was to the scale that it was, but we knew something very bad had happened, and that Simchat Torah day was not like any other that I'm sure you guys have experienced, and probably and hopefully never will experience. It was very, in many ways, a sad Simchat Torah day, when it's actually not supposed to be that way. But this past week, a group of us, about, I would say, I think 18 to 20 of us, went to Israel to basically, one, see what was going on, and try to, in some way, help the situation. Now, to be quite honest with you, there was nothing specific that we wanted to do in terms of helping. We just went to see what can we do. So we arrived in Israel on Monday, last Monday, at 6:30 in the morning, and the trip began right away. We got to the hotel, put our suitcases down, and got on the bus, and off we went. We went to the Knesset, and it happened to be that particular day, the Knesset members were having a special meeting with the families of the hostages. Now, it's one thing to see on your text messages, on WhatsApp, or on the news, or on social media, the family members of these hostages speaking, whether it be fathers, mothers, brothers, aunts, uncles. But it's yet another to actually be face to face with them and see their demeanor, their facial expressions. One of the, I'm honestly tearing up just thinking about it again. The parents of one of the hostages, he's a 20-year-old lone soldier from Plainview. And the parents were talking to us. And it was like you're seeing like a ghost speak with you. They were speaking, but it was, you could see that they had cried so much that no more tears were coming out. They were white as this napkin here. And basically, it was a sense of desperation and plea for help. But plea for help knowing that really nobody can help them. And one of the very, very moving things that the father said was, he asked us, he said, "Do you guys have children of your own?" And we said, "Yes." He said, "You guys know where your children are right now. But unfortunately, we have no idea where my son is. We don't know. For 81 days, up until that time it was 81 days. He said, I don't know where my son is." And he went from one family to the other, and it was basically repetition of the same desperation that each family member felt. Now, seeing that, God forbid, you or any of your family members should ever be involved in such a thing. But you put yourself in their shoes for just 1 second. Can you imagine how they're feeling? Not to know where your loved one is. This is a 20-year-old boy who was trying to give back to his country. He was the first line of defense at the Gaza border. He was in one of the tanks and tried to do everything he possibly can to defend himself and his comrades and the kibbutzim, but he was just simply overwhelmed. They don't know if he's killed, they don't know if he's still alive, they don't know if he's dismembered, chas v'shalom, they don't know anything. All because why? Because he was a Jew. So there was nothing that we could say to them. Almost everybody was in tears. And all you could do is just give him a hug. Just give him a hug and say, we're here, we're davening for you every day, we're praying for you every day. And I just know that you're not alone. And the father said, that really means a lot to us. He said, you don't know how much that means to us, knowing that everyone is praying and at least taking maybe 1 ounce of burden off of our shoulders. And what does it mean to be a Jew, guys? What does it mean to be a Jew? A Jew means that you feel the burden of your fellow Jew. And in no other time, look, I don't have to tell you, but we as Jews are very compassionate people. But this really brought forth that compassion to another level. And just keep in mind every day, Baruch Hashem, all of us here live relatively comfortable lives. But don't forget that there are those, and this is going to be a common theme in the next few minutes that I'm going to be speaking, that don't forget that there our brothers and sisters in Israel are not living such comfortable lives. And they haven't been living comfortable lives by any stretch of the imagination since October the 7th. And every day just try to keep that in the back of your mind. Now, whether it be by an extra parak of Tehillim you say, or an extra bracha you make, or a good deed you do, a little bit, $1 more stucca here or there, but whatever it is that you do on your own personal level, just have in the back of your mind that you're doing it in order to help your fellow Jew, your fellow brother, your fellow sister. And it was at moments like that that you really, really feel that we're all connected. Because it didn't matter to these Yemach Shemam Ezechram, these terrorists, whether you were a lefty or it political leanings, it didn't matter. It didn't matter your religious, non-religious. You wear white kippah, black kippah, sisit, no sisit. You keep Shabbat, you don't keep Shabbat. You eat kosher, you don't. They didn't give a hoots about that. All that mattered was that you were a Jew. A Jew is a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. Then from there, basically we spent the whole day there. And then the following day, we went to we went to the city of Ofakim. Ofakim is a neighborhood about 22 kilometers north of the Gaza border. That was the farthest that these terrorists were able to infiltrate on that Simchat Torah day, on that Shabbat. Now, Ofakim has a population of about 40,000 Jews that live there. And on that morning, at around 6:30, the sirens went off, as you all heard. And one particular individual by the name of Itamar Alus, he's part of the local police of that neighborhood in Ofakim. He was getting ready to go to shul with his kids. He was getting ready before he wakes up his children. He hears the sirens, and hearing sirens in Israel is like a routine thing. But this was beyond, it was a siren that was continuing. One siren after another siren after another siren. And then shortly thereafter, he hears rounds of gunshots going off, which is something that is not routine. So he goes out of his house. When he's out, he sees his neighbor, and I'm telling you exactly verbatim, basically what he was telling us. He sees his friend, who's also from the police station, come out, and they look at each other. One says to the other, "Was that a gunshot that you heard?" He says, "Yes." And they start looking around to see where it's coming from. They hear more gunshots being fired at some location. So they both go in. The other guy, though, doesn't come out. Itamar goes in, puts his kids and his wife in the shelter room, grabs his gun and comes out to see exactly what's going on. As he's walking in the streets, and he took us exactly around the route that he was walking, he sees the rabbi of the community on the ground, bleeding from his leg. And he says, "Makara, Makara." He runs towards the rabbi. And as he runs towards the rabbi, he sees that his leg is profusely bleeding. And he tells the rabbi, get up, let's go to the side." And the rabbi says, I can't move. I can't stand. He rips off his pants. He makes a tourniquet around his leg so he stops the bleeding. And while he's doing that, one of the terrorists from the junction next to them sees them. And Itamar realizes that the terrorist sees them, and he jumps on the rabbi and tells the rabbi, "Rabbi, don't worry, I'm going to cover you." Knowing that at any moment he's going to get shot. And these are not gunshots. These are big semi-automatic rifles that these Yimach Shemam were carrying. And if you saw the bullets that are in them, the bullet is really this big. It's huge. So he throws himself on top of the rabbi, and he was explaining to us that, when he threw himself on the rabbi, he knew that at any moment he's going to get blown up to pieces. And he said, I was okay with that. At that moment, I was absolutely okay with that. I accepted it, but I just didn't want the rabbi to get hurt. So he said, as he was lying on top of him, he heard these bullets literally be traveling right over his head and over his right ear. And for about a minute or so, the guy was just firing away. And he said, every second I was waiting just to be shot in the head, and as I was waiting, it wasn't happening. So he said, you can imagine the feeling that one has when you're in that kind of a predicament. And after 1 minute or so of this guy firing, the firing stops. And he couldn't believe that he wasn't shot. But the terrorist, Yimach Shema, he thought that he had already killed him because they weren't moving anymore. And after a minute or so, he finally stands up. He drags the rabbi into a house. He knocks on the door. He introduces himself as Itamar. The guy opens. He throws the rabbi inside, and he goes back out to see where else he can go to find anyone he can help. And he goes around the block. He sees another guy shot. Goes to that guy, but the guy was already dead. Goes around the block. There were more people that were killed. Goes around, he sees his friend, his name was Dennis. He sees Dennis was shot and grazed on his head. He was shot on his arm, he was shot on his leg, he was shot on the left side. The guy was profusely bleeding. He tries to help him as best as he could. For about 5 or 6 minutes while there were gunshots being fired in all different directions. And there's still nobody there to help them. There's nobody there to help. He tears his shirts, makes a tourniquet around the arm, tears the pants, makes a tourniquet around the leg. And this is going on for about, he said 5 or 6 minutes, until a couple of guys from the police station who were also part of the medic team arrive to help him. They do whatever they can, and as they were trying to help Itamar with this guy Dennis says, listen, you guys stay with him, I'm going to go to the next block. And there's, by the way, video of this, all of it, everything that I'm telling you, there's a video of it from the security cameras that he showed us. Some of it he sent me. He goes around the block, starts trying to find where these guys are, because he still doesn't know how many there are, and he doesn't know where all these shots are being fired from. After about 45 minutes or so, that for a couple of times he's shot at these terrorists, he comes back to see what happened with Dennis. And when he comes back, he sees that these guys are still there. He says, what are you guys doing here? Why didn't you take him to the hospital? And so these two guys from the medic team said, no, there's nothing that we can do for this guy. He's gonna go. There's nothing that we can do. And seemingly, Dennis was taking his last breaths. Hearing this, he says, Itamar, don't worry, I'm okay. I'm okay to go. Go see who else you can help. And while he's telling us, he's bawling. Itamar is replaying everything that happened that particular day. He says, I'm not going to accept the fact that you guys are saying he's not going to make it. He says, bring me a car right now. They bring the car. One of the guys had a car there. He throws him into the back seat of the car. He said, I went as fast as I could down the highway, got him to the nearest hospital, which was about 40 minutes away. He drops him off at the hospital, and he comes back. He comes back to Ofakim to see what else he could do. As he comes back, I'm sure you guys heard of Rachel's house. Does anybody hear of Rachel's house? Okay. After we're done, you can look up on Google Rachel's house. So Rachel and her husband, they're 80 or 85-year-old. They're a Persian couple, actually, who lived in Ofakim, where 5 terrorists came into the house and stayed with them for about 9 hours. When they came from Gaza into Ofakim, there was a lot of running that was involved, apparently, with these terrorists, and so they were very tired and hungry. So they went into this house, and Rachel, the wife, cooked and baked for them for about a few hours while they were there, and actually fed them, made them cake, made them cookies, made them pasta. And 5 of those terrorists that were in there, a couple of them came out of the house and they went into another couple's house trying to kill whoever was in that house. Meaning, randomly, they were going into people's houses trying to kill whoever they came across. And he sees a family of 5 that he knew yelling and screaming from the house. So he gets into the house. It's incredible in some of the things this guy did. Drags them up into the roof of the house, and I have the video of this also. Takes them into the roof and basically throws them from one house of the roof to the adjacent house, basically getting them to safety. And he starts battling and shooting these 2 terrorists that were in the house and kills both of them. No, Itamar kills the terrorists.
So he came back to the house that they were cooking.
Yeah, so this guy killed 3 or 4 terrorists, and all of this happened basically over a 7 to 8 hour period where there was gunshots going back and forth between him, and there were 16 terrorists that were in that neighborhood. Unfortunately, there were many that were killed. A couple of brothers that were killed there. In total, there were 52 people that were killed in that neighborhood. And I have a video of Rachel's house that was shot up. And again, it was bullet holes like this. The entire house is shot up. And these guys, I have some picture of the terrorists also. If you want to see them, I'll show it to you. But again, the heroism that people like this, and I'm sure there are many other people like Itamar Alus all over the kibbutzim and all the other neighborhoods that these terrorists were in. There were many other heroes, but this was one guy that we met. And imagine a guy who has 4 kids, a wife, a family, a life, was willing to sacrifice his own life just to save other people. Now, what's the lesson? Nobody asks us to sacrifice our life for anybody else. But can you do anything to help others? I'm sure we can. I'm sure we can. What can you do? You have to look into yourself and see what it is that you can do. Some people can help financially. Some people can help with a kind word, a smile, a hug.
Some people can go to Israel and visit, no?
I think it should be obligatory for every single Jew to go to Israel, not only to see these things, but also just to say a thank you to people like this. People like that, to us it's a story that was told to me and I'm retelling the story to you. But people like that lived it. And you don't forget about the trauma overnight. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, stays with you. He told me he still wakes up at night 2-3 times a night trying to grab his gun right away. He says his kids are traumatized. So it lives, it carries on. But what do we do? Remember again, October 7th, there was always anti-Semitism, there was always Jew hating. But now it's really come to the forefront, whether it be in the schools, at work, on TV, on the streets, you name it, there is anti-Semitism. Just look in the city. You know, these animals, pro-Palestine, pro-Palestine. It's not pro-Palestine, it's hate Jews. But the very least that we can do is not only not hate another Jew, but love another Jew. Know that we're all brothers and sisters. If there's anything I can impart to you, is that always remember that another Jew is your brother. It's like one body with many, many, many different parts. If one part gets hurt, the entire body gets hurt. Don't judge someone because they're not as religious as you. They don't have a beard like you do. They don't wear the kippah like you do. They don't daven like you do. It's okay. Judaism comes in many, many different flavors. And I'll be very honest with you. You know, before I went to Israel, and not just after October 7th, but before I went to Israel, it bothered me sometimes how some people were. You know, if they had a tattoo, if they were a Jew with a tattoo, or they had an earring, or they had a nose ring, or they did things that I don't consider to be, you know, your normal Jewish thing to do. It pissed me off a little bit. And I would internally judge that person. But after I went to Israel and seeing the things that I saw, I don't do that anymore. Something just clicked. You just don't judge. At the end of the day, they're a Jew. And always keep that in the back of your mind. And that's what I mean when I said it was a life-changing experience. In that you learn not to judge other people, not to judge another Jew. And by the way, 3 days after, or 3 or 4 days after October 7th, Itamar gets a call. And guess who it was?
Dennis.
It was Dennis.
Wow.
Here.
So Dennis had a couple of surgeries. And he saved his life.
The
He
rabbi
saved his
was
life.
good also.
The rabbi was good also.
Unreal.
Yeah. And the family of 5 that he saved in that house, a real hero who saved lives. He has his own post-trauma issues to deal with. And we're trying to help him in any way we can. And hopefully we can get him, we're trying to get him to come to Great Neck to talk to us also. From there, we went to the south. We went to Kfar Aza. Kfar Aza is about half a kilometer away from Gaza. So the way they're separated is by the Gaza border. There is that very fancy multi-billion-dollar fence that Israel had built. And then from there, it's about, maybe a quarter of a mile to where Kfar Aza is, the kibbutz Kfar Aza. And they also have a fence that basically separates their border to the fancy fence that they had infiltrated into Kfar Gaza by tearing down that, it's a very nonsense kind of a fence. It didn't take much to break that down. And we were exactly where they infiltrated through the fence. And if I told you that, I don't think you will appreciate this because Baruch Hashem, you've never experienced it, but to smell death, even 3 months after this whole massacre, to walk into these houses that were shot to pieces, burnt to char. You walk into these houses and you smell the death that was perpetrated in those houses. House after house after house after house. Again, they did not differentiate between what kind of Jew is living in these houses. It didn't matter. In fact, Kfar Aza and Kibbutz Be'eri, which were the two worst hit kibbutzim, they happened to have the most left-leaning, liberal, pro-Palestinian residents in the kibbutzim. These were the people who they either killed, burnt, beheaded, or took hostage. I have some videos, maybe I'll show it to you. But again, people always talk about the Holocaust, and I'm sure you guys in school learned about the Holocaust, you read about the Holocaust, you read about the gas chambers, but here we actually saw it. Saw it less than 3 months after it was perpetrated. It's really a life-changing experience to know how much hatred they have for us Jews. And had they not been stopped, I promise you, these guys would have gone right across Israel, killing everybody. No qualms about it. You walked into the houses, the toothpaste is still in the bathroom. The wipes are still there. Their spices are still in the kitchen. But the rest of the house, including the mattresses, anything you can think of, burned to char, and the walls shot up with thousands of bullets. Thousands. And these bullets are like this big. When you see the video, you'll understand what I'm saying. And then while we were there, sirens went off. The rocket didn't hit into the kibbutz Kfar Aza that we were in. It hit the kibbutz adjacent to Kfar Aza, and it happened to hit a synagogue. This is while we were there. While we were there, another rocket hit to a synagogue next to Kfar Aza. From there, we went to where the concert was, to the field where the Nova concert was. And you walk in, it's like a surreal environment where, they had made a memorial. It's a huge, vast open field with a lot of bushes and trees on the sides. And they made a memorial of the 365 people who were either killed or taken hostage. And you walk around and you just try to imagine, if you watch the videos, you try to imagine what was going through their minds when these people were shooting up the place, people running in all sorts of directions, hiding in the bushes and in the trees. It's a very, very surreal, moving experience. You guys heard of Natalie Sanandaji, the girl from Great Neck? So she happened to be there that day that we went to the field. And I went up to her and I said, I'd never met her, I didn't know her, she didn't know me. I said, Natalie, it's nice to meet you, but what did it take for you to come back to this horror of Gehenna that you were in? How did you come back? And she said, I'm still processing. It hasn't really hit her reality yet. But can you just imagine being in that situation? Chas v'shalom. Again, the point being, always try to put yourself in another Jew's shoes. We can't even imagine the horrors that these people went through. From the festival area, we went to what's called Galit Junction. Galit Junction was started by this Israeli woman, Hadassah, who on October 8th, the day after the war started, she wanted to provide some food for a group of soldiers. Exactly a group of 6 soldiers that she wanted to provide some food for. So she set up a small tent by this Gilat Junction to give them food. And every day the numbers grew and grew and grew. And right now they're providing 30,000 meals a day. 30,000 meals a day to the soldiers who are in Gaza, who come out when they can to eat something and then go back. Or whoever comes out takes food and, if possible, takes it to the soldiers in Gaza. And to see all of this is done on a purely volunteer basis. There's no government funding, there's nothing. There's people grilling all day, barbecues, there's physical therapists and physiatrists there giving massages to these soldiers who come back. You name it, they have it there. And it's an amazing sight to see how soldiers of all ages, from 18 years old to reservists, 45, 50, army generals who come there, showing the unity of Am Yisrael. There's nothing like it. It was horrible to see everything we saw and all that was done to the Jewish nation. But at the same time, it was an unbelievable sight to see how united the cohesiveness and camaraderie of Jews are, and what we should always be like. Unfortunately, it had to take a tragedy like this to bring the Jews together, but hopefully we can learn the lesson. And we can learn the lesson not on a mass scale there, but learn the lesson here. Why can't we just be good with each other? There's enough hate towards us from the outside. We don't need to add to it from inside. Go ahead.
I have a question though. So when you were going around these first few like cities and like the field, was everything at this point more or less like cleaned up, or did you still see things like blood, bullet casing,
No, so
other things like that?
from a halachic perspective, a Jewish body has to be buried right away, and also any Jewish blood has to be buried. Okay, so Zaka, they're basically their institution that's responsible for gathering of the bodies. They cleaned up the bodies and any Jewish blood. They scraped it off and buried it with the bodies. But everything else is still standing. They didn't touch anything.
Wow.
Both in any of the kibbutzim, they didn't touch anything. Everything stands. Now, for how long they're going to keep it like that, I don't know. But it was still exactly the same as it was. I have videos if you want to see. Maybe, Nachami, I'll send it to you and then you can send it to the guys. Yeah.
You were like scared going to Israel, any of you? Like, all this, you know what I'm saying?
No, it's a fair question. Personally, I was a little bit hesitant, but the excitement of going was much more empowering than being scared. And to be quite honest with you, once in Israel, I felt much safer walking in Yerushalayim, walking in the south. And of course, in the south we had security guards with us, but in Yerushalayim we didn't. I felt much safer in Yerushalayim than I do when I walk in the city.
When would you advise us to take a trip over there?
Why?
No, when? Like, as soon as possible?
As soon as possible. Because at some point, I think they're going to start cleaning up these kibbutzim. And then you're not going to see it live. It's one thing for me to show you on video, but to be there, to see it yourself, to see exactly the route they took. Yeah, it's a war zone. Of course it's a war zone. What's that?
How old was
Itamar, I think he's around 50. Maybe a little bit older.
Older?
What's that?
Older, do you think? Wow.
Maybe 52, 53, something like that. I have his picture. I'll show you his picture.
Aside from going, what else could we do?
What else can you do? Of course, the biggest thing you could do is pray and say Tehillim and do good deeds. These things go a really, really long way. But also try your best to get your friends, your co-workers, your colleagues to go to Israel, to say thank you to these soldiers. You don't know, I also have this on video, how many soldiers told us they're so grateful, and one of them said, you guys coming here gives us chizuk, and it's the adrenaline we need to keep us going and fighting. This is what they told us. Now in the past, when you spoke to an Israeli soldier, you're excited, you see them, can I take a picture with you, can I hold your gun? Sort of poo-poo you away. They don't do that anymore. At least they didn't do it this time. They were really, really appreciative of the support that we were giving them. They felt it. And they said they felt it. Because they know that it's not them fighting only for themselves. They're really fighting for us. Because if we don't have Israel, we have no defense. They're not just fighting for the Jews in Israel, for the land of Israel, but they're fighting for every single one of us in diaspora. And they know that. And you going there to show your appreciation, show your thanks, give your support, goes a tremendously long way. Any other questions? Maybe you guys wanna, let me just show you something here.